So next up, he will talk about minimum viable issuance. Please welcome Jerome de Tychey from Ethereum France.
Print less, burn more. Print less, burn more. Sorry, yeah. MVI. Hello, everyone. Very glad to be here again. I'm Jerome. You can find me at this handle everywhere, JDETYCHEY. Couple of disclaimers before I start this presentation. I sit on the shoulders of giants, such as Ansgar, Anders, Kaspar, Justin, Patchy, and so on. Pintail as well. So a lot of the the graphs that I'm going to be showing are from their work. I'm just here to pass the message. So about the message, let's talk about minimum viable issuance or issuance as a whole. But for that, we need a little bit of glossary. So what is issuance and dilution? When I say issuance and dilution, what I mean is the amount of new ETH we are minting each year, usually, expressed in percentage most of the time, percentage of the total of the supply. So you can think about issuance, dilution as the growth of the total supply of ETH. It's most usually expressed raw, I mean, without taking into account the burn that comes from activity on the network. What is the deposit size? The deposit size, or the D for short, it's the percentage of ETH that are at stake. We have a staking contract on Ethereum, and you can deposit ETH on this contract. And if you count the number of ETH on this contract and you divide it by the supply, you get the staking ratio or the deposit size. And it's very often wrongly simplified as the bigger the deposit, the better. Big deposit, good, bad deposit, small deposit, bad. Wrongly for different reasons, I'll get into it. We have a reward curve, which is simplified form here is 166 times the square root of the deposit size. That's the ETH that we give to the validators for their work. It's aggregated, of course. It's also known as our security budget. It's a bit simplified also because it assumes that the validators are working well, not being offline too much, and so on. It's been defined circa 2019 without knowing much what was going to be going on at stake, if we were going to have a lot of people going at stake, few people going at stake, whatever, how and when we will be able to withdraw, and so on. So a lot of guesses and unknown when we pick this curve. And finally, there is the staking yield. That's the easiest thing, right? The staking yield. How much is the staking yield? That's the percentage received by stakers. It's often, not always, but most often given raw, I mean, without subtracting the dilution of the issuance. So if you have a staking yield at 2.8 and a dilution at 0.8, your real yield should be 2%, right? But most of the time we just look at the 2.8 because that's the biggest number. So, staking is 2.8. It's not always giving you the breakdown between what you get as tips. Like as a staker, you know, sometimes you propose a block, and in the block there are some tips, so you get some tips. So the 2.8 is usually taking into account the tip. The MEV as well. We have some ordering of the transaction that gives a little extra for the block builders. That's not taking into account this MEV. And most of the time, if you're using a third-party staking services, a staking service provider, they are taking also some basis points. So advertising the staking yield does not always give you the real yield that you get at the end of the fees and so on. Okay, so now that we get the glossary out of the way, let's look at the beautiful picture. Have you seen this picture before? Yeah, no one. Okay, so I highly encourage you to see this picture when you visit Paris in the Louvre. It's the money changer and his wife from Quentin Metzes. At first glance, it's a genre scene, like classic Flemish paintings, where you see people at work, the new services, the bourgeoisie getting richer, and so on. But at its core, it's more of an allegory and moralizing representation of the moneylender profession. You have different signs of vanity, different signs of Christian memento mori reference, such as the scale, the candle of the Last Judgment being turned down, and it's been analyzed as a way to denounce avarice. Even the lady here is lured out of the way of her praying book and looking at the money being weighted. And like the painter here wanted to encourage the bankers to be more gearing towards Christian/Erasmian morals about moderation in their business dealings. And it was later demonstrated in another painting from Quentin Metzis about the usurers, where you have really grotesque figures having super high interest rates and so on. What I personally love about this painting is the diversity of the point of views and different levels of interpretations. Like, you can talk about this painting for hours. And also it includes a really nice thing to catch if you visit flea markets. There is a banker mirror here. It's like a spheric mirror where you can look at the mirror and see the whole room at the same time. So you'll be counting the money and at the same time looking at the people in the shop, see if they are stealing something or doing something nasty with your owning. Anyway, it's a little bit like we have in the issuance discussions right now. We have lots of different point of views, and it's not helping to take a decision on when to move, how to move. The subject matters assume some form of expertise in blockchain and security, in economics as well, and a lot of curiosity to dig into it. We have LLMs now to help us get better at this type of curiosity, but yet. And having those discussions from past year now, I often end up into different cruxes, like people that are looking at this and be like, yeah, but we need to consider this, we need to research more, we need to do more, and so on. And I think like it's a bit of an allegory of our situation right now. We have consideration about the security and credible neutrality of Ethereum. We have consideration about the deterioration of the moneyness of our currency, but also a consideration about fundamentals of supply growth moderation, notably. And also looking at the dwindling, sometimes, or mostly dwindling purchasing power of our own currency, ETH. So it's kind of worrisome to see that at play when you're advocating for issuance reduction. There are very strong security reasons to do it, and they should prevail above all. Yet, those security reasons can be downplayed, can be overshadowed, notably when you are taking into consideration some very short-term effects that can be advocated regarding DeFi and such. Thus, the conversation can often turn into, yeah, but what is the impact on the ETH price? Are you going to destroy this? Are you going to impact that? Did you take into consideration, and so on? But the beauty of issuance reduction is that it's fundamentally improved both Ethereum and ETH as a strong asset. Let's have a look at a few numbers. Here's the issue in practice. Currently, at stake, the deposit side is, give or take, 39 million ETH. So that's 32% of our current supply. It's up 3 points since November. We have a yield of 2.8. Issuance is 2.64, and you have some tips and some MVI, of course. So post-burn, the issuance is 0.82. It's all right. It's a lot by some standards. It's a few by other standards. But it's also something that's trending up considerably. The more ETH we have at stake, the more issuance we will have because of our yearly issuance curve, our reward curve. If we compare with the best in class in that consideration is Bitcoin, the circulating supply will grow 0.4 next halving, so in 2 years, and it's currently at 0.8. So the proposal that I'm championing is minimum viable issuance, setting a maximum amount of new ETH created per year of 0.5% of the total supply. And you can immediately think about that as a strong reference point regarding what's the delta between what we have today and what we will have if we get into this. That's 720 million extra dollar of ETH that will not be minted. So that's kind of strong, something that's really sizable, I would say. Why is it urgent to address the problem? We have a dam in place that's preventing a total inundation, but the tide is rising, and it's rising pretty fast. As you know, we are entering a phase where more and more institutions are getting into the mix. They are starting ETF, DATs, ETPs, and so on, and they are getting approval from the regulator to stake. And they are staking. Grayscale notably stakes 70% of their ETH. Maybe they will consider to stake more as they perceive less and less risk. So that's an enormous influx of new ETH that's going to come at stake. And we have some unknowns, of course, on the centralizing effect of this. Some custodians in the US are proposing stakings, notably Coinbase Prime, sorry, Coinbase Custody. And the way the protocol handles those new ETH is by imposing an entry queue that only allows for a few ETH to go at stake every epoch. So currently, the entry queue is full. Yeah, it takes 60 days to get into staking. So while they are not at stake, they are just holding their ETH and waiting for an opportunity window to go at stake. But it will go at stake more and more and more and more and more and more. If you're interested, there is Hildoby that gave a presentation about that back in November during DevConnect staking gathering. So as I said in the introduction, we have security reasons to do it. It's not always perceived immediately as such, but our proof-of-stake system is by far the most sophisticated there is in the market. Which, when we compare with other proof-of-stake, we are like, yeah, but this blockchain says they have 80% of their tokens at stake, and it's great. In our case, it doesn't work this way. We were aiming initially for having 15, 20-ish% of the ETH at stake. We considered that to be sufficient. When we add more ETH at stake, we are not adding much security beyond certain thresholds. And when we reach higher thresholds, as at 50%, there are actually strong arguments to explain that the extra ETH is actually diminishing the security. Our last resort in terms of security for Ethereum is to have ETH available on the execution layer to come at stake and defend neutrality. So that revolves around different problems that we have to face. First, the credibility of a large slashing event. As we get bigger deposits, it is centralizing. There are economies of scale at play. There are considerations regarding too big to fail at play, and thus it benefits the biggest stakers. While you are watching the dilution, as someone that is not staking, you are more and more considering to go at stake. If I tell you the dilution is 1% and you are holding your ETH and not doing anything with them, you should go at stake to prevent the dilution effect. So this snowballs eventually. There are strong considerations now about having large slashing events being not credible anymore. We had a few events in the DeFi space where restaking tokens were involved, and people were like, yeah, we need to bail them out because the effect is going to be huge. So all in all, we are less and less ETH to defend the decentralization and the neutrality of the network. So that's, for me, the most important thing to consider. But it gets into the weeds of the security and things to consider around that. But that's not all. The effect of reducing dilution is improving the marketability and the moneyness of the asset. So of course, to advocate for ETH as an investment, as a long-term holding, you need to consider the marketability of the asset itself. When we have a finite supply, and you don't have to consider dilution or having to consider little dilution, it makes it a sound money. If something is even having a negative growth in supply, it's an ultra-sound asset. And that was the highest of the hype around Ethereum. We have ultra-sound money. So, of course, printing less doesn't necessarily mean eventually we immediately burn more, but that's a part of the equation. And that's something we should definitely consider in terms of the fundamentals of the asset itself. Pushing ETH towards staking is removing ETH from the execution layer, so having less ETH available for doing things on DeFi. Plus, when you consider the DeFi activity, we need to have ETH that is available to go do something on DeFi to promote the innovation on DeFi itself. As we get into the snowballing effect of having more ETH at stake, we pinpoint problems regarding liquid staking tokens and other staking derivatives. When all the ETH are at stake, or most of the ETH are at stake, those derivatives become the de facto money of our network, and thus we lose our monetary premium. It can be very short-sighted to argue that, you see those tweets sometimes just saying like, look, there is almost no ETH left on no ETH left on the centralized exchanges. All the ETH are going at stake. This is great. Yeah, this is definitely a clear indication of confidence into ETH the assets, but at the same time, this creates liquidity squeezes. So you have less ETH available to buy, and thus it's hindering adoption and hindering large players to come and play. And furthermore, we are putting DeFi in a cul-de-sac. Okay, bear with me on that. The staking yield is going to continue to trend. The staking risk is going to continue to trend lower. As more ETH go at stake, it's going to be less and less risky to go at stake. And currently, staking pays twice as much than depositing your ETH on Aave. Yet, the security analysis, the risk analysis, should probably not be this way. And capital naturally flows towards what's yielding the most and having the less risk. So what we have today is that we have artificially fabricated in protocol an unfair competition to our own product market fit. There is no way DeFi can be competitive to staking without just embracing staking massively. This is implying something about moral hazard regarding DeFi being brought into consensus and vice versa, problems in consensus being brought into DeFi. And furthermore, if we print more than we need, we are technically subsidizing this by printing more. So we have an opportunity to fix this once and for all. Enters the MVI. The writing has been on the wall for the past 4 years, so it's not a new proposal. It's just now we think that we have more than enough research being done on the matter, and we have such an emergency to act that we need to act now. What's amazing about MVI for core devs and holders alike is that it's super easy to implement. It's not a big change in the protocol. It's not a big change in the staking in the node software, and it's also super high impact. And to represent the minimum viable issuance, saying max issuance is 0.5, we can consider different type of curves. You probably remember the croissant from Justin Drake. We can have things that are like this class of curves, the red one, or the purple one. There's different classes of curves to consider, and they can all implement MVI together. If you want to dig about on the topic, I highly recommend those reference practical endgame from Anders that demonstrate how credible, simple, and small but positive this kind of MVI approach is. If you want to get into some more economic analysis, notably with Tim Rovgarden, the economist that gave the analysis on 1559, you can check this one, Economic Limits of Permissionless Consensus. And overall, there is a great thread on ETH Magician called the Issuance Curve Adjustment Protocol. But some private research firms, like the research team of Grayscale, recently started to take positions like, hey, okay, this staking model needs an update. It's obviously not going the right direction right now. So what you should keep in mind about that, it's compatible with different type of curves, it's high enough to keep the system valuable, it's reasonable yield at typical stake level, and it's also a durable policy anchor we can advertise that is simple to understand. What's the dilution? 0.5, max. What's the real dilution? Well, let's look at the end of the year. We'll probably be more at 0.3, 0.2, whatever. And it gives us a way to position ourselves clearly against the contender, Bitcoin, and against all the rest. So 21 million Bitcoins, yeah, forever 21, infinity divided by 21 million, yet Bitcoin hasn't figured out its security budget. We have. We have a quantum-resistant roadmap. We have a lower dilution guaranteed for the next 5 years and likely for the next 10 years and very likely forever. You have yield-bearing option in DeFi. You have no downtime, no competition against AI data center. Ethereum should be the first blockchain by far. And when you consider all the alt layer ones, they are diluting like crazy. So what are we waiting for here? And we can also get 50 cents to present the thing, like MVI is 0.5. Now I want just to address two usual critics. We should never touch our monetary policy. We only have one chance to do it. No, don't change it, don't change it. Well, actually, we have a history of maximizing our security and neutrality by stop overpaying for this. Like almost 8 times we did the thing. It's great to consider like the signaling. It's great to consider information. It's great to be clear, and that's why 0.5 is a clear way of saying like max is 0.5. Current max is probably 1.5. And lastly, we have something that we very often hear about the issuance discussion is inflation. I've been very careful on not using inflation so far. Because when we hear 0.82 is our inflation, it's wrong. It's not our inflation. It is our dilution. The inflation is the rise in price that we observe on an annual basis, but also, by extension, the loss of purchasing power in external goods of our currency. So inflation is not dilution. Inflation is measured by the rise in price, and as you can see with the lowering of the gas price, with our scaling, with L2, with EEZ, and so on, we are actually in a deflationary situation for Ethereum. Like, we pay less for the same goods services. But at the same time, our token is not performing well. So it's technically what we call an over-savings trap in economics. We have a high risk-free rate, which is a toxic illusion of everything is going fine, don't touch anything. The effect of dilution from the market perspective when it comes to lowering our purchasing power is not straightforward, but we can sum it up this way. The market observes that our dilution is going up, it's trending up, it's not doing good for our security, and at the same time we show no signs of wanting to take care about the problem. So having a dilution of 0.8 raising up towards 1.6, killing the economy at the same time, it's actually much worse than inflation itself. All right, so I want to conclude on that. It's a massive win for everyone. If you have ETH, it's great for you. It's going to be a transfer of surplus towards the holders. We're going to do more security for cheaper, and it's going to improve the fundamentals of ETH. It's going to push the innovation into the DeFi industry, likely also bring more activity towards the L1, and thus printing less and burning more. Here are 10 reasons why we should do it, and we should have done it yesterday. And we have now also analysis on how the surplus transfer is being handled, depending on the reward curve that you consider and consideration about the implied cost for the stakers. And I'm 3 minutes late, very sorry for that. But happy to answer any questions, and I'll be here the whole day for getting into questions if you want to mingle. That's it. Out of time for questions?
Yeah, I see the hands raising, but please find Jerome around.
I'll be there to answer your question. Let's
really
And if you're too shy to come to me in person, you can just give me a message on Twitter. I'll be very happy to respond.
Yeah, please.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.